We have our next session now, which we will share with Andy Bowers, who is CCO at Panoply, Slate network in the US. Slate has decided to open its own podcasting division, Panoply. The network not only produces audio content for Slate, but also for other publishers and advertisers. Chief Content Officer Andy now talks about the podcast revival and why he thinks that podcasting as a medium will grow and continue to grow in the future. So, very warm welcome on stage, Andy Bowers.
Thank you. This is what I need. You might be wondering whether podcasting is useful for you. The title of this talk, as it was put in the program, is The Rise and Rise of Podcasting. I'd like to add something in the middle, the rise and fall and rise again of podcasting, and you'll see why in a few minutes. We could also subtitle it The Little Internet Medium That Could. It is very different from other internet media, as you will see. And my story starts with the term podcast renaissance, which is being thrown around a lot these days. People say we're in one. That's probably true, but every time I hear that, it reminds me of a dinner party I attended around 2009. I was talking with an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. She asked me what I was doing, and I told her that I was building a small podcast network for the online magazine Slate, and she said, "Oh, what's podcasting?" And I explained it's digital audio on demand. It's like internet radio, but better because you can choose what you want to listen to when you want to listen to it. And she said, "Oh, yes," I saw a look of recognition. "Oh, yes, I remember podcasting." And then a look of pity came over her face, and she said, "Isn't that dead?" And it was like a stake through my heart, because I had left a prestigious journalism job at NPR, the public broadcasting radio network in the US, to join the internet. I'd been a White House correspondent, a London and Moscow bureau chief, but I felt around 2003 that the future of my medium, audio, was going to move online. I wasn't sure how, but I joined the online magazine Slate, which seemed to be open to new ideas, and we fumbled around for a little while, and then in 2004, podcasting came along. It was a revelation to me, because suddenly you could push out audio content on demand to people when they wanted it. It was the thing we were looking for to make audio possible. It was very clumsy in those early days. I don't know how many of you tried it back then. It involved downloading to your computer after finding a special app for it, and then transferring it to your iPod, and then keeping your iPod clean or it filled up too fast. It was only for nerds, believe me, and I am one, so I tried it. But even then, it started getting a lot of media hype and buzz, and this article in The Guardian actually is where the word podcasting comes from. It was this gentleman, Ben Hammersley, who came up with the title. Those of us who are podcasters hate the term, we always have, and so curse you, Ben Hammersley, but it stuck, and we've made our peace with it. But it was still a heady time. How can I move this forward? There we go. We at Slate jumped into it. We started playing around with whatever we could think of. First, it was just me reading Slate articles aloud, which was okay, but a little dull. And then we started doing chat shows, bringing in some of our best talkers. And we realized that all the rules that had governed radio no longer applied to us. We didn't have to do a certain length. We could be brutally honest if we wanted to. We could even swear if we wanted to, and it turns out we did want to quite a bit. We built some political chat shows, a few others, and we noticed that the audience for these was the most engaged audience we'd ever seen for anything we did at Slate. They were really passionate about it. And it wasn't just us, professional media organizations. It was a lot of people jumping in, like this guy who was podcasting, as you can see, from his bedroom with a microphone tied to the ceiling with a belt. But you know what? Hey, it worked. And so it exploded in this time. It exploded so much that in 2005, the new Oxford American Dictionary declared podcast the word of the year. Well, we should have watched the fall that was about to come, because fall it did. This is a completely unscientific graph of podcast hype. You can see the source is my gut. But I think it's pretty close to accurate, because 2005 was a high water mark. Everyone was talking about it. And then it kind of sank like a stone. And you see the bottom here is 2009, which was the fateful dinner party I attended and felt so humiliated by. But that wasn't really the whole story. But here's one of the things that happened. The media likes to move on to the next new thing, and YouTube started shortly after podcasting. It, of course, exploded, and it was much easier for average users to use. You could upload very simply. It had a great interface. So a lot of people moved to YouTube to upload whatever was on their mind. Then a few years later, Netflix came along, and they really revolutionized on-demand media. They had curated content. It was professional content. It was behind a paywall, whereas podcasting still had, some professional great stuff and some really terrible stuff all mixed together. It was hard to find. So, this became the standard of what on-demand media should be. So around this time, we started seeing headlines like this, and they were a stab to the heart. But, I was beginning to wonder the same thing myself. Was podcasting dead? Well, the hype told me it was, but the data told me it was not. We looked at our numbers, and our audience kept growing. And then a company called Edison Research came out with a study, and they showed the same thing. This is overall podcast listening in the US. And you can see from 2006 to 2009, it was growing. These are people who had tried podcasting. And if you follow it out a little bit, this is where it is today. 98 million Americans have tried podcasting, and a lot more around the world. This is our core listeners. These are people who listen every month. The rise hasn't been quite as dramatic, but you see, especially in the last few years, it has kept going up to 57 million Americans who regularly listen to podcasts. And this is important because it contrasts with the hype. Again, here's my gut check on what happened. Through this period, the media and dinner party conversations, it barely had a pulse down here until 2014 came along. And a couple of important things happened in 2014. From the beginning of the year, all of us in podcasting could feel something change. There was a little more hype. Bigger, more interesting names were jumping into the space. They thought, oh, we'll try podcasting. And a key thing that happened was that Apple, which had introduced the iPhone in 2007, and that was a huge boon because it overcame all that syncing with the iPod and everything. But it still wasn't that easy to get a podcast. But they introduced in 2014 a native app. That meant it came pre-installed with the operating system, and you couldn't even delete it. So anyone who wanted to try podcasting, all they had to do was know about and find this app. That was a big change. And so you can see my gut check hype graph here. 2014, things really started to go up. But the biggest thing that happened, and I hope the sound will play for this, the biggest thing that happened in 2014 is something a lot of you probably may be able to guess. We're going to hear the audio? There it is.
This is a Global Tel-Link prepaid call from
Adnan Sayed,
an inmate at a Maryland Correctional Facility. This call will be recorded and monitored.
So Serial was a brilliant true crime story of a 1999 high school murder in Baltimore, and the man who was in prison for it, who may or may not have been actually guilty, and we were left to decide this. It was listened to by hundreds of millions of people. It was an explosion, and it was a global phenomenon, not just a US one. And so it obviously made a lot of people pay attention to podcasting for the first time, and new users came in. But it also, very importantly for us, brought in a lot of new advertisers. Suddenly they thought this was a viable medium. We could actually spend some money on this and get a return from it. So here's just one final graph where you see my gut check on the hype versus the actual listenership. It has gone up and up and up, and my theory is that that is because Every year, it gets a little easier to listen to podcasts. The technology has been our Achilles heel over the years. But every time it gets easier, more people are willing to try. And when people try podcasting, the research shows that they rarely stop listening. In fact, they listen to more and more podcasts. My theory is that it's like the DVR, where once you get used to recording and having shows on the TV available when you want them, you can skip commercials, all of those things. Why do you want to go back to someone else's schedule? This is a more convenient way to listen, and people really like it. Plus, there's content that you can't get on the radio. So 2005, Slate launches podcasts. We built out a network of shows, political, culture, women's issues, sports, parenting, and a whole bunch of others. We got up to 15 shows. And when 2014 hit and we could feel the hype starting to rise, we knew that some of our competitors would want to start getting into the space and replicate the kind of success that we'd been having. And so our choice was, we could compete with them and try to do better than they were doing with our head start, or we could sell them our expertise in production, in ad sales, and podcasting ad sales is a unique thing unto itself. It's different from any other kind, in distribution. So we decided to go that route, and in 2015, we started a company called Panoply, and that was exactly to do the things I was talking about. We went to big brands, magazines, newspapers, best-selling authors, and said to them, we can produce it for you. If you're producing it for yourself, we can sell ads for you. We can do cross-promotion within the network. We can put you in a great neighborhood of other quality podcasts. Almost everyone we approached said yes, and we started working with big brands. This is just a small portion of them. Many of the people speaking here today, in fact, are working with us on podcasting. And it's proven to be a good strategy for us. So, why is podcasting useful? A couple of reasons, 3 reasons. First of all, that engaged audience I talked about. They are so passionate that, in fact, they will come out. We've started doing a series of live shows where all we do is tape the podcast on stage in front of an audience. A couple of microphones, a few chairs, nothing more than that. And we'll get hundreds, if not thousands of people who come out to see the people that they love, the club that they've joined, as it were, do the podcast. And it's very sticky. Some people have been listening to our shows for the full 10 years that we've been doing them, and they proudly tell me that when they meet me. So, there are not a lot of things on the internet that engendered that much passion, that much engagement. It is also a mobile first. In fact, it was one of the first mobile applications out there. It was mobile before there were smartphones. It was on your iPod. And this is important. People don't need to use their eyes for it, so they can do other things. They can carry it around in their pocket, and they can go to the gym. They can drive a car. And we hope one day it's going to be a lot easier to listen to podcasts in the car, and that may be coming soon. They can be in the kitchen, do all the things that you can't do while reading text or watching video on the internet. And it's really fun to do. Believe me, we have people who used to work at Slate, started podcasts, they've left Slate to go on to other jobs, but they keep doing the podcast because they love it so much. They love the engagement with the audience. Not everyone has this experience, but most people I find, when they do a podcast that works, they love it. It's like a reward for them within the organization. Monetizing. How does this make any money, you might be asking? Well, it does. It's the basis of our business, and there are 3 main ways. Advertising, of course, is the mainstay of podcasting, and I'll talk a little more about that in a second. Direct listener payments. This is also basically a paywall, and the way that most people do this is the freemium model, where they continue to have a free podcast that's out there for anyone, ad-supported, and then they put behind the paywall, say, a bonus version with extra content and ad-free. That's the most common model. And then something that some of you may be working on now is customer-branded content. This is where we at Panoply have been doing this, make podcasts on behalf of companies, and more about that in a second too. So in the early days and up until now, it's starting to change a little bit, but most of the advertisers in podcasting have been direct response. That means that each show has a unique promo code that they give out for people to buy the product, so they can tell exactly how many people from each podcast are buying. And the reason that these brands keep coming back to podcasting is that it really works. This is typically how podcast advertising works. There's a short series of pre-rolls, kind of teaser ads at the beginning. There are a few mid-roll ads. These are longer. They're often improvisational. Good advertisers allow the hosts to improvise a little bit, and these tend to be read by the host of the program themselves. So it's not an explicit endorsement, but it is the voice that you trust, that you came to listen to, giving the ad. It's like a throwback to old radio in the US, where they used to do that all the time, but it works really well. And then some places also use post-roll ads. We don't do that as much. But compare it to the other kinds of mobile advertising. I mean, this is from Slate's own mobile app. These small things that pop up, you just try to get rid of them as quickly as possible, and I would defy you to name 3 that you've seen in the last month that you can remember. It's very different with podcast advertising as a mobile platform. This is a fellow named Mike Pesca. He does a daily show for us called The Gist, and Mike makes it his mission to never let the listeners hear the same advertisement twice, even if it's for the same sponsor, and sometimes the sponsors go on for months. But he tries to tailor each ad to the episode or something going on. So one example is recently an actor named Abe Vigoda died. He was known for, among other things, The Godfather. And there's a famous scene where he brings a wrapped up package that contains a fish in it and delivers it to Don Corleone's people. And it's a message about the death of one of their people. And Mike was advertising a company called Casper Mattresses, which delivers mattresses right to your door packed in remarkably small packages. Well, how did he get these 2 things together? I will let Mike tell you. I hope.
Abe Vigoda died recently, which brings me to Casper Mattresses. All right, follow me here. Remember that scene in The Godfather where Abe Vigoda comes in and he's got a package and he puts the package down, and I think Sonny says, "What the hell is this?" I think it's Clemenza who says, "It's an old Sicilian message. Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes." Well, that package, the size of that package, that's not much smaller than a Casper mattress, what a Casper mattress comes in when they ship it to your house. Now, I don't know if the fine people at Casper would take kindly to me conflating their fantastic mattresses to a message about the death of mob enforcer Luca Brasi, but I think they will, because I'm really getting at how compact and easy the delivery was. To send a message about the death of Luca Brasi was pretty easy. To send a mattress seems not that easy, and yet Casper makes it easy.
The fine people at Casper did not object, as a matter of fact. I'm told that we're running out of time. Should I wrap it up here? Okay, well, let me just quickly show you 2 things. These are real tweets. The audience is so engaged that they know that buying stuff through our promo codes helps the show, and they will organically tweet out things like this to get their friends to do it to support the show. That's not something you see in a lot of other kinds of advertising. We've also done, we had a big success last year with branded content. We get very high CPMs, is one thing I was going to tell you. But we did an 8-part science fiction drama series for General Electric. They commissioned us, and it became such a big hit that it was the #1 podcast in America. And it was branded content, but it contained no ads whatsoever. It was a really genius move on the part of GE. So I'll just say that at this point, when I go to dinner parties, most people know what podcasting is, and I feel very vindicated all of a sudden. And if they don't know, I show them that purple app on their phones, tell them how to get it, and they join the revolution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really feel sorry now, as we ran a bit out of time. If you have a burning question, we'll share it with you now. If not, no. Okay, I'm very sorry. Every other question over lunch, I think.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I really love it. The radio is dead. It is more alive than ever. We said it so often. So Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck.